never forget that I went to the restroom and I cried and I was on the floor and I just said, God, there's got to be more. And this little lady walks in, and that day was probably the worst day that I had in 2024. Just because I had a new beginning with Christ doesn't mean that I didn't get tested. Like, I wanted to punch this girl in the face.
You little gangster, babe. How you have a temptation of knocking somebody out? I got a temptation of a double cheeseburger. You got a temptation of knocking somebody out.
My struggle's different than yours.
Every struggle different, baby.
Everybody got a different struggle. She was telling me, she said, my friend does a prison ministry. And I'm like, I've got to meet this lady.
And there was no way that I wanted my wife to go into the prison that I just got out of. You don't understand, Nina, and you'll never understand what you do for people when you go inside there. You're not watching this on accident.
Hi, welcome to New Beginnings podcast, the third episode in 2026.
Welcome,
My
everybody.
husband is all giggles. We're super excited. We're laughing. We had a moment. Anyway, we're starting this episode. We always start our episodes with telling you about new beginnings, and we also close it up telling you what's coming next. So at the beginning, we're telling you what New Beginnings is. New Beginnings is a podcast that was birthed out of vision that God had given to us to start a podcast to not just speak to Christian people, but to non-believers or people who are wanting to know about who Christ is and hearing real life transformations. Maybe people won't go to a church, but they might watch a podcast. And so our hope is that this podcast would touch somebody's heart, somebody's life, to allow God into their life and see that what we're sharing is real. If you just, when people would ask me to go somewhere, it was like, if you asked me to go to a restaurant, I would be like, okay, I'll try it one time. And if it's not good, I never have to go back. And I would tell people that about my church, like, come check it out. And if you don't like it, then you never have to come back. And so this podcast is to share with people about who Christ is. And if it doesn't work, I promise you, you don't have to try it. But if you try it and it does work, then I promise you that you could be like, wow, they were telling the truth.
Yeah, it's good.
And so New Beginnings is about God stepping into your life and giving you a new beginning, especially if you're tired of doing the same old thing or you're tired of what you've been doing. For me, I was tired from the past, I'm 50 now. Dang, I just told my age. But previously to that, before I got saved, I've been in serving God for 19 years. But previously in that, all the way till I was 30 years old, I lived a very destructive life, from the time I was a teenager and all the other stuff. And if you watch in the previous episodes, it tells you about my testimony and leading up until this point of how God has stepped into my life and what God has done and how God put me and my husband together, and my husband coming from, incarceration, and then when he got out, how God introduced us, and how God told us to be married, and everything that has come to full fruition of allowing God and through obedience, because in the word it says, through obedience God brings blessings. And now we're sharing the blessing part of our lives. We shared the rough, but we've shared when God entered, and now that we've been in obedience to God, we've shared the blessings that come with it. And so, the other day I was just reading and I was telling my husband, that Eve, her disobedience caused her to lose everything. And when we're disobedient unto Christ and what God really wants, then we have the potentially to lose everything that God has given to us. And so the reason why we've been able to be blessed, and like the last episode that we shared about blended families, how when we allowed God into our life in this area, because God's a gentleman, he's not going to force his way into anything. If you just surrender and allow him into these areas of your life and truly let him take full residency, then you will see how God truly can bring healing and bring that new beginning into every area of your life. And that's what he did with our marriage. That's what he did with our
Yep.
kids. That's what he did with the blended family.
That's what he did with our company.
Our company. Yeah,
Yep.
we didn't even really talk a lot about that, our company. So, in this episode, we said we were going to talk to them about the blessings that God has entrusted us with. And one of the blessings is what my husband just said, our business. We didn't know what it was like to be business owners, and God told us to open up a company. And funny thing was is I was already doing events and helping and orchestrating stuff. And the company that I would go and get from, they said, "Hey, we want to sell our company." And we were just kind of like, "Yeah, right." Like, yeah, well, we're not the people. He was very successful. He had a good job working at Neiman Marcus, and I was working as an oral surgeon, and I was working with an oral surgeon, doing oral surgery, which is definitely really good money. And God told us to open up a company, and that's exactly what we did. And they tried to tell us to pay 150,000, right?
They wanted to sell it to us and sell it to us as a whole, building trucks, everything for 150 grand.
And
And we looked at each other. We're like, yeah, now we'll just keep renting. We ain't got 150 grand. I don't even know who anybody who got 150 grand.
yeah, our credit didn't say
Our credit
150
didn't
grand.
say 150 grand on there either. So we just kept on, kind of pushed it aside and went back again. And they said, okay, look, we narrowed it down, and we've never done this. We'll sell it to you for half off. So we'll sell it to you for 75,000. And we're like, man, that's a really good deal. But if you ain't got 75,000, it ain't that good of a deal.
Yeah.
And little by little, we kept telling them no, 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 because this wasn't what we wanted to do. We didn't plan this. And then we actually prayed about it. And then when we prayed about it and we said, okay, God, if this is you and you want us to do this, and you have to make a way, because I don't
Yeah.
have $75,000 and I've never owned a company or a business.
And
So
I didn't go to college to be a business owner. I didn't study for it. And we were like, yeah, we still laughed. And then they were like, and we just walked away again.
walked away. And
And then they said, okay, this is our last and final offer. We're going to sell it to you for $50,000. And we were like, ooh, that
nice.
still sounds good.
That sounds
That
great.
sounds even better than the
I ain't gonna
first
lie, I almost
proposal.
didn't go shake his hand, but I was like, I ain't got the money, but I'll shake your hand anyway.
Yeah. But and I think this is what, we constantly are sharing, because there's so many people that don't know the true testimony and the true story of what God did for us and how he's done all of this. When people look at our lives, they don't know everything that we've, you know, gone through, but they don't also know that this is real. This is like God truly like opening up doors and parting red seas and really giving us a new beginning in every area of our life.
There's
And it's going back through prayer. It's going back to when we prayed for Roman, and then look what God did. It's going back and saying, no, God, like we're going to stand on your word. We're going to stand and believe that you didn't save us and do all of that just for nothing. Like we just really have this belief and this high belief that God can truly give people that new beginning and give them things that money could never even buy. And so when the man came back and he's like, "All right," and then finally I think he went down and he looked at us and he's like, "All right, this is it." And we were like,
I thought the last one
"Okay,"
was
like
it.
I thought that was the last one. And I think he said 25 and we were like, "Psh, okay." We walked away again. We just kept on like walking away
I didn't have
and be
this
like,
kind of money. I didn't
yeah.
have grands, and I wasn't gonna put my family in jeopardy to go take a $50,000 loan out, and I didn't know what I was gonna do with it.
Right, and we didn't know about the business. We didn't know anything. Well, lo and behold, we get a call and they were like, okay, look, we just want out of this business. We're going to go ahead and sell it to you for $5,000. And that was the exact amount that we had gotten from our income tax. And it was just like the exact amount. And I remember we went and talked to our pastor and he's like, do this. This is God. And I felt like that with our business. And then we fast forward, now we have our company, which is Phenomenal Events and Party Rentals. And that was definitely birthed out of God as well, just like the podcast and our
Yep.
family and our kids and our everything. And so,
Let me tell you. So the next blessing, we keep saying blessing and blessing, and sometimes people think blessing as money. Sometimes people think blessing as a new car or a new house. These are blessings that only God can give you. These are
um,
blessings that only God can open up a door for. And these are blessings that are honestly blessings for our family, because to some other families, they're definitely not doing this. And to some other families, they're not buying a company. But we understood from the beginning that if God told us to do it, we would do it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
our next biggest
And it was
thing,
like, here we are, fast forward. We've now had our company for, did it in 2019. We're in 2026,
7 years now.
7 years now. And, it has its up and its downs, but through it all, God has sustained us. And God, every time we're like, okay, God, like, here we are, we're doing what you called us to do. And it's just still like, God's like, I gave this to you. And,
That
what we
part
want
right there,
people to know is
I gave it to you. When
is
God
what,
gives it to you,
yeah,
yes, that part right there that you just said
yeah,
is gonna be epic. Because if any couple or any man or any woman or any child, if you ever get to the point where you understand that God gave it to you, nobody else can take it away.
that's right.
Nobody else can take it away.
And I think I got that understanding when we first got married, that if God gave this to me, then nobody could take that away. And because
Mhm.
it's from God.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to our business. And so here we are in 2026. And, when my husband and I first got married, and I've always had a heart for prison ministry. And I dated people in prison. I thought that was part of prison ministry. Like, I was showing them the agape
Oh my
love,
God.
right?
Lady.
I didn't even know Jesus at the time, but I was still showing the agape love, right? And agape love means unconditional, right? So I was still, even as a non-believer, showing agape love.
Hey, you've been doing prison ministry for a long time.
I'll go visit you. I'll put money on your books, whatever.
Me
But
too.
I was, but I
I
was
was in
doing it.
prison. I didn't do prison ministry.
Yeah. Okay. So I was already pre-prison ministry. But, I always didn't understand it because, my uncle was locked up as a little girl, and I would write to my uncle. And I would always feel bad for him. And it was my dad's brother. My uncle Tony was incarcerated for many years. And I remember that I was the only one writing him letters as a little girl. And I think I was probably like 10, 11. And I remember he was my favorite uncle. And I didn't understand what that meant at that time at age 10, like prison and incarceration. Like, I just knew that my uncle was away. And so, and then years later, my favorite cousin, the one that I shared about in a few previous episodes, was the one that was murdered. And we grew up kind of close together, as teenagers. And he ended up getting incarcerated. And when he got locked up, I was writing him. Like, I wrote to him faithfully. And of course, then I ended up dating a few people, and they ended up getting locked up. And I was like sending letters and visitations and doing all of that. But I didn't know that in the years to come, that there was going to be this desire in my heart to share the love of Jesus Christ in the prison. And I remember telling you when we first got married that I wanted to do prison ministry. I thought I was going to be a prison guard. I thought I was going to go in there and work.
Not
And you
on
were
my
like,
watch.
definitely not.
Nope.
You were like, nope, you're not going. And so I was like, okay. So fast forward, after 15 years, in our 15th year, which was last year of marriage, um, that's when I remember I was praying and just crying and asking God. Like, I had went through a very tough time in my spiritual walk, that I was just like, God, I need your help, and I really need you to, like, help me in my walk. I need to feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose in what you've called me to do, God. And, even though I had everything, like, but I just still felt like something was missing in my life. And I felt like God wanted to do something more, but through all the spiritual battles that I was going through, because serving God and this new beginning that God gives you when you allow him into your life doesn't mean that everything's just happy, hunky dory, and everything you're in strawberry fields forever. You're gonna go through trying times. You're gonna go through battles. And but what matters is that you remain steadfast in who your relationship with Christ. And so I was praying and I was crying. I don't know if you remember that, but I was going through that tough time. And I just literally was like, God, you know, I need you and I need you to just do something that's beyond what I could imagine. And, I remember I was working at this dental office, and this little lady walks in, and that day was probably the worst day that I had in 2024. Was it 2024 2025? I don't know. No, it's probably 2020. It was 2024. I was having the worst day. Yep, it was 2024. I was having the worst day of my life at this job. And I was just kind of like 2024, the end of 2024 was a very trying time for me in the beginning of 2025 in my spiritual walk. And that day I was at work and I just was crying out to God. And this little lady walks in. And that day, I was actually going to quit my job because there was a coworker there and I wasn't used to it from being a business owner and still having a business and, working as a dental assistant to help out this office. It was temporary, it was part time, it was during Christmas, whatever, holidays. And this girl was talking to me and I was just like, "Oh my god," like, I told you, just because I had a new beginning with Christ doesn't mean that I didn't get tested. Like, I wanted to punch this girl in the face for the way she was talking to me, and I hadn't had people do that. And so just being transparent, like, just because I was a Christian didn't mean that I didn't have these temptations or these things that were happening to me and how I was gonna cope with them. And I shared that about how, there's that old nature that
Babe, you a
sits
little
to
gangster, babe. How you have a temptation of knocking somebody out? I got a temptation of a double cheeseburger. You got a temptation of knocking somebody out.
my struggle's different than
Every
yours.
struggle different, baby.
Everybody got a different struggle. And so I remember I was at work and I was like, I called you on that lunch break and I went to the restroom and I'll never forget that I went to the restroom and I cried and I was on the floor and I just said, God, there's gotta be more. Like, this is not what you have in store for me, God. Like, and it took me back to that place when I first cried out to God. I didn't have some eloquent prayer. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to, but I just opened up my heart and said, God, I need you. And there's got to be more for me than where I'm at
So
and all the
you
things that
prayed
I'm
that?
going through.
When you prayed that, he answered.
Yeah.
And he prayed that God showed up and gave you something that you truly didn't even know you needed.
Yeah.
You met that lady.
No, the little so then like it's lunch and I go back and I'm coming back from lunch and I walk in, I'm like, okay, Nina, just finish out the day, whatever. So I go in and this little lady walks in and she starts talking to me and we start talking about faith and we start talking about where do you worship and where do you go to church? And so we started, it struck up the conversation. And I told her, and I told her, I'm a part of Austin Powerhouse Church. I told her that my pastor's on a documentary, near death experience, where he had an NDE. And I start telling her it's on Netflix, and I start telling her the whole story. And um, and y'all are gonna hear more in detail about all of that. But she was telling me, she said, my friend does a prison ministry, and I'm like, I've got to meet this lady. And when she introduces me, she gives me her number, and I'm like, "Okay, this is kinda weird. I'm gonna call a complete stranger, and I'm gonna tell them, 'Hi, my name is Nina, and, I'm interested in prison ministry, and, this late your friend gave me your phone number.'" But, I just really went home and I prayed about it, and I just again, prayer changes everything, and God truly answers your prayers. And, I had the lady's number, and, I called, my pastor, and I told him the whole situation, and he's like, "Give her a call, like, this is definitely, God opening up a door for you." And I called the lady, and her name is Miss Linda Strom, and, she's just been such a blessing into my life, and she truly helped me to heal. She truly helped me to, she took me and put me under her wing and allowed me to go in with into the prison ministry. I shared my story with her and I shared with her about how God, um, how I wanted to do prison ministry, but I also shared with her what God did for me in my life and how he saved me. And she said, "You have a story to tell." She says, "You have a story to tell, and I want you to go into the prisons and share your story." And so she invited me to their ranch, and I went over there, and I've been connected with them for connected with them for over a year now, over a year and a half now. And I now go into the prisons. We are now
Which
going
prisons do you go into?
so now we go into the O'Daniel unit in Gatesville. Me and you, we go in and we do that on Wednesdays. And so we're able to share with these women. We're doing a curriculum based on relationships.
Relationships. Mm-hmm.
And we go in there and we share about, marriage. We share about them building their relationship back with their kids. We share about them building their relationship with their loved ones, maybe their family members. And a lot of them have grown up in broken homes. And we talked about that in our last episode about broken homes. And so we're going in there and we're sharing the love of Jesus Christ, and we're sharing how God has given us that new beginning, and so that they can continue to seek out their faith for when they get out.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Fridays I've gone into the hobby unit, and I do another class there. And that's been and I've met some wonderful people who have gone through similar situations, that they are going to be some of our guests on this podcast, that they're going to share their testimony of how they gone through stuff, and how when they allowed God into their life and what God has done for them and how they love the Lord. I mean, for me, when I went to and then we've gone into Murray, we gone into hobby, we've gone into I think those are pretty much the main ones that I've gone into, the ones in Gatesville,
I
and the
wanted,
trustee camp.
yeah, that was good too. I wanted to say, like, when you had asked, like 15 years ago, I wanted to go into the prison. Maybe I can give just a little clarity now that I had just gotten out of prison maybe a
Yeah.
year ago,
Yeah.
and there was no way that I wanted my wife to go into the prison that I just got out of. And I didn't see that. But I love how God plants seeds. And I love when we listen to God, it works out. So fast forward 15 years
Seed
later,
time and harvest.
seed time and harvest. 15 years later, you ask again and you're like telling me and you're all excited about this Miss Linda, and you went to the ranch and it was this and it was that, and when you came back, the excitement on your face, there would have been no way that I could have said no. But and then again I prayed and God said, "Yes, she's okay and you're okay." And I was like, "All right, yeah, go ahead, babe. Babe, you have my blessing to go inside there." And I remember the first time you came back from that Wednesday night and you were just this and you were that and this, and I remember looking at you and I said, "I will do whatever I need to do because I need to get you back there. You don't understand, Nina, and you'll never understand what you do for people when you go inside there, because I was inside there and they had volunteers inside there. And if it wasn't for those volunteers for 18 months that served me, and I thought these volunteers got paid. I thought it was a job.
You thought it was fake,
I
right?
thought it was fake. I thought all of
Like they
this
put on a show?
put on a show. And then when I got out, and I got out on that Tuesday, I started working that Thursday, and then I went to church that first Sunday, and I went and saw the volunteer. And when I walked into that church, I was in a suit. I wasn't in my jumper anymore. I was in a suit.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I went and shook his hand, and he kind of like looked at me, and he didn't recognize me.
Because you didn't have your jumpsuit
I
on.
had my
What
jumpsuit
color
on,
was your
right?
was your jumpsuit, orange or white?
It was white.
Oh.
They were white. And
Oh, so they're still the same color.
yeah, they're still the same color. Sometimes you get a onesie, sometimes you get two piece. But
Oh,
and when I went
an
in there,
adult onesie.
and when I went in there, I saw that he was in church and doing all of that, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Wow, this is amazing." But to know that volunteers like you that go in with a pure heart to just want to give,
Yeah.
because you don't get paid to go. Matter of fact, it costs us money to send you to prison every single
Yeah.
week, 3 times a week sometimes, to send you up there between our time, our finances, our agendas and schedules and everything. But the fact that when you went in and then you invited me that one time to go with you, and I was super nervous because this was the same place that I prayed and vowed to never come back to, was the same place that God opened up a window Not even a window. He opened up a door, a hallway. He opened up for us to go back in there. And when I saw you feeding those ladies nothing but pure heart and God's word, I was like, wow, she found her place. This is her calling. And I remember 15 years ago, I knew that you were going to be something amazing. I knew that you were going to do something. And I told you that I was going to buy a big old RV bus and I was going to tote you around and I would carry your Bible on stage and I would serve you like that. But when I saw us going into the prison ministry and I get to hold your Bible and those ladies run up to you and you are the brightest light that they have seen in years, in months, and we just got back from the holidays, and when we saw them over Christmas, and Christmas is tough for everybody inside there, and even in the world, because you're missing your loved one and your loved one's in there and he's missing you, and it's tough inside there for that season. But to see you answer your call and to see how God has propelled you, and when we talked about earlier what a blessing looks like, I think the biggest blessing in my world is knowing that I'm in God's will and to see that we're walking in God's will because every door has started opening up. We're here at the New
Yeah.
Beginning podcast because of
Yeah.
the prison ministry.
Right. And I think it's just, not only that, but it's so touching, to see these women and to see what God is truly doing behind the walls. And I never imagined that the prison ministry would bring more healing into my life than it was me helping heal them. It was when we had the Christmas service and we were able to go in there and we were able to see. And I think that's why I'm so hungry and desire to have a transitional house, because there's so many women
Yes.
that just need that new beginning, that want to know God and don't have the support when they get out. They don't have the resources, they don't have the support. I mean, you had it, but they don't. There's some of them that their parents are still dysfunctional, and maybe some of those, their family members. But for me, I every time I leave, I have this spirit of gratitude that I get to come home and I get to see you and I get to see my children and I get to hold them. And, they're not worried about when I go in there and we're doing worship, they're not worried about who
Talk
sat
about
in
it.
their seat.
Talk about
They're
it.
not worried about the Starbucks coffee being too hot or too cold. They're not worried. They're like people that are really hungry for Jesus. And I think that's what this world is missing, is people being really hungry for God. And I know that right now in 2026, as we've been praying and the church is, you know, just fasting, it's like we need a hunger for Jesus again. And that's what new beginnings is that it's never too late to have a new beginning with God.
No, it's
It's
not.
never too late. And it's never too late for you to have a new beginning in your marriage. It's never too late to have a new beginning in your family. It's never too late for you to have a new beginning in your career and in your job. And, for me, I get to do my chaplaincy is coming up. I get to do even that.
Yes, you are.
That's even a blessing that I will be getting my chaplaincy, and that's just another, obedience unto God, of being like God is truly opening up so many doors of Him directing our footsteps and our path. And who would have thought?
When God gave you that vision of the house, when God gave you, when He put that in your heart, and I was like, wow, we do need a transition house because my success came from Christ, yes, but it also came from a support. It also came from having a home. It also came from having a job. It also came from a lot of other things. And that's what the New Beginnings is going to do with the transitional home. We are ready to help.
I think
everybody coming out with that, with a home, with a job,
and
with a
helping to get their
purpose.
life on track. And I think like when I look at this and to kind of wrap this up a little bit because we're going to be having guests coming up soon. And I hate always having to, like leave y'all with those things, but it's a lot of stuff that we have to share through segments. It's too much to give to you at one time. And believe me, it was too much for God to give me at one time. But who would have ever thought that God would take such a sinner like me, a woman with no purpose, with no joy, no love, and truly, truly transform my life and be able to do all of this? Who would have thought? And I'm here to tell you, if you're watching, that this new beginning, it doesn't matter how far you are, it doesn't matter how bad you are, that God can give anybody and everybody a new beginning. And if He did it for me, He could definitely do it for you. And that's what new beginnings is. And so we never want to end a podcast without giving you the opportunity to know Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior. I'm so sorry that I'm holding back all these tears.
We don't. If you're watching this and this at any part compelled you to just say, I do want a relationship. I want that relationship that they're talking about. I want that new beginning that they're talking about. She said it's not too late for me. That's you. You're not watching this on accident. We serve a purpose driven God, and He waited until you got to where you needed to be so that you can watch this and it touched your heart. And if it did touch your heart and you do want to become part of this, it's super easy. All you have to do is repeat after me.
And open your heart and
Yes.
say, Lord, I invite you into my life. And I want to make you my Lord and my Savior. I acknowledge I am a sinner and I have fallen very short. But God, I know that you died on the cross for my sins.
Yes.
And He'll give you that new beginning. And I'm sorry I had all my tears, but I wore my good makeup, so they're all gone now. But it's just when you really reflect and you look back on where you used to be versus where you are today, it's hard to it's hard to grasp. It's hard to comprehend in our own natural mind that God could take two people and make something great. And so that is you. We are super excited. And so you got to
Yes.
stay tuned because there's more.
There's
There is
more.
more episodes you're going to hear. That's just the
Yes.
beginning.
If
You
you
just
have
heard
any
the beginning of the podcast.
comment on this episode, comment on the bottom. Tell us, let us respond back to you. Like, what were you talking about? And what about this?
Yeah.
Comment on there. Let us reach to you because I only have so much time here, but I'd give you all my time going back and forth. So please don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. We're on all different platforms.
Hit your notification.
Turn on your notifications for TikTok, YouTube,
Yep.
Facebook, and Instagram. We are here at the New Beginning Podcast. We love you.
And we can't wait for y'all to hear more. We love you,
Yes.
and we'll see you next episode.
All righty. Y'all have a good one.